Hello and thanks for staying on LN 24/7. This is Politics Now. My name is Morno Balakbobo. Tonight we'll focus on two conversations. The first being the new minimum wage. Here is a rundown of our talking points. We'll look at a deadlock on the amount to pay workers and talk about the proposed 615,000 naira. Too high or too low? And of course, state government's commitment to paying the minimum wage. Joining the conversation today is Jide Ojo, public affairs analyst. He's also a development consultant, author, and columnist. And of course, he will be joining us via audio call. But later, of course, on the show, we'll talk about fuel scarcity. Here is a rundown of our talking points. Who is to blame? NNPCL or marketers? State of refineries in Nigeria and federal government's commitment to alternative source of fuel. Well, Abraham Agbo, public affairs analyst, will be joining us live in the studio. He's a business consultant, facilitator, ex-banker, and human rights activist. We'll be right back. Stay with us. So let's start a conversation with what the Vice President said in a meeting. He believes the economic reforms of the Bola Tinubu's government will soon yield results and is calling on Nigerians to be patient. Well, the Vice President said the removal of fuel subsidy and the unification of all segments of the forex exchange market, amongst other reforms, have pushed the cost of living to new highs. He said this at the Second Chronicle Roundtable in Abuja on Thursday. He also told the gathering that Nigeria is on the right track despite the initial challenges with the economy. Now, move away from what the Vice President said. The Nigerian Labour Congress still insists the proposed 615,000 naira minimum wage is realistic, dismissing claims that some states cannot pay such an approved amount if approved. Well, the NLC is proposing 615,000 naira monthly salary for workers, which is a jump from the current 30,000 naira. Although many believe it is unrealistic, the Labour Union believes many states can pay if they get their priorities right. The federal government announced an increment of pay for some workers on the eve of Labour Day, but Ajero faulted the move, describing it as mischievous. Well, before we get to the conversation, we'll further report of what organized Labour and the federal government said on Workers' Day.
We shall not be moved. Our leaders are behind us. We shall not be moved.
This is the song of workers and labor unions in Abuja who gathered at the Eagle Square to celebrate the International Workers' Day. During their speech, both leaders of Labour spoke on issues ranging from the state of labour movement, the nation, economy.
On this International Workers' Day, we stand as the voices of the Nigerian working class, proud and resolute.
The NLC president called on the Nigerian government to prioritize the welfare of workers.
Governance must prioritize the well-being of citizens. Our success as a nation hinges on policies that uplift and empower every individual. We must bridge the gap between the governed and the government.
Speaking further on a new national minimum wage, Joe Ajero assured workers that negotiations were still being carried out and threatened that industrial harmony will not be guaranteed if the process continued to stall.
That should the minimum wage negotiation continue and linger till the end of May, we can no longer guarantee industrial harmony in this country.
The TUC president, Festus Osifo, also called on the government to take action on the nation's refineries.
We demand action on our refineries. Promises remain unfulfilled, while operational ones in the private sector fail to ease the people's suffering.
He further commented on the state of power in the nation and advised government to reverse the electricity tariffs within the next 1 week.
The NLC and TUC hereby advise NEC and power sector operators to reverse the last increase in electricity tariff within the next 1 week.
The Minister of State Labour, Nkiruka Onyejocha, stated that although the Tripartite Committee on National Wage is yet to conclude its negotiations, workers will not lose anything as the new minimum wage will take effect from the 1st of May 2024.
The committee could not reach a consensus at its last meeting before the May deadline. We want to reassure Nigerian workers that we are working diligently around the clock with organized labor to conclude negotiations and ensure a successful outcome.
As Nigerians await the announcement of a new minimum wage, Nigerians can only hope that the economic hardship will be reduced. Joining us via video call is Jide Ojo, Public Affairs Analyst, to give us a breakdown on the deadlock on the amount for the new minimum wage. Thank you so much for joining us. All right. What do you make of the inability of government to meet up with the deadline? I mean, this is the beginning of the month of May. The previous minimum wage expired on the 18th of April. Today is the 3rd of April and still yet no announcement.
Well, it's not unusual for government to decide from its responsibility. In my column in the paper this week, I weighed in on this issue. And when you look at the agreement that was released on October 3, 2023, the minimum wage committee was supposed to be inaugurated in November 2023. But it wasn't until January 30, 2024. And the minimum wage law actually says that committee to negotiate minimum wage to be inaugurated 6 months to the expiration of the current one. So obviously the government did not take that issue seriously, and that is part of why we are where we are. You could see the mistake that the federal government tried to play by increasing the wages of some section of federal public servants or public servants to license by 25 to 35% on the eve of the event. And they are saying that it will take effect from January 1, 2024. But you ask yourself, why was that announcement not made in January 2024? So what the Tinubu administration has tried to do is to use the it to buy time. Because obviously with the labor union asking for 615,000 naira, no government will do that kind of amount. And I will not be surprised that this may drag on longer than expected.
All right. Now, so what do you make of Labour asking for 615,000 naira? And of course, they gave justifications for that amount, citing a lot of things from accommodation to feeding, education, and some other things that they listed. What do you think of this amount? Is it too high? Is it too low?
I don't know where you consider the survey and you think 615,000 needs a lot of sense. It does not, and it will not make sense. Because this is a practical committee. Assuming with that consider that federal how many in Nigeria can take 615,000 minimum? How many sectors, players, how many companies, how many businesses in the private sector will pay their workers the 6,000 naira? So does that make sense? it doesn't make sense, and I've been very consistent in saying that it has to be decentralized. What I have heard before was that this is just an asking price for the labor union, and that it's not their rock bottom. So when they put their back and forth, they eventually agree to maybe something like 100,000 or 10.
Now, let's talk about the state governments and their ability and capacity to be able to pay, because the current minimum wage, 30,000 naira, is not being effected across the states, for most states rather. And the Nigerian Governors Forum, rather, on Thursday assured the Nigerian Labour Congress, Trade Union Congress, and the workers of an improved and sustainable minimum wage. They issued a statement after their virtual meeting on Wednesday, which was signed by their chairman and Kwara State Governor Abdulrazak, and also said that the 37-member tripartite committee tasked with reviewing the national minimum wage is still in consultations and has not completed its work. And the Governors Forum stated that it is assessing each state government's fiscal capacity and potential effects of different proposals to determine an enhanced minimum wage that can be feasibly sustained by the states. What do you think governments should pay, and do you think the state governments can actually meet up to the required minimum wage that will be announced hopefully before Democracy Day?
Now you are talking. The issue for me is that as I've conversed on other media channels, let there be amendment of the Nigerian Labor Law that we are now for individual states to negotiate minimum wage with their workers. These are state workers, they are not federal workers. And this is a federation. Federation is consisting of federal and the federating units. Federating units are independent of the federal government. Now, let me, I said this, even, was it yesterday or 2 days ago, I was discussing this. I said, Lagos State budget in 2024 is over 2 trillion. Rivers State budget in 2024 is 800 billion. But National State budget in 2024 is less than 400 billion. So, there is even no way the Governors Forum will say, all of us, we can only put 50,000 or 100,000. Because they are not equally endowed. They do not have the same workforce. Lagos State government will have about 40,000 in its workforce. Zamfara State government will have only 10,000 in its workforce. And when you look at the federal allocation that comes to each of the states, they are not, it's not prorated, it's not equitably distributed. There are oil producing states get more than non-oil producing states. Lagos State, because of that, gets more than states that are not generating VAT. So when you look at both the federal allocation and internally generated revenue, they are not having the same. So if a particular state is earning average of 70 billion from federal government every month, and another state is getting 20 billion every month, and you want both states to pay equal amounts to their workers, I don't think that is fair. I know the labor union does not agree with me on this, but I am convinced that the best way, because the other way is that if we push the government and insist that there must be a national minimum wage, eventually they may pay them and say, okay, what is our national minimum wage? We say 100,000. We say fine. But in 86, if I'm going to pay 100,000 minimum wage, that means half of the civil servants will have to be paid. What do? You cannot use your case about this. You cannot use that government must pay minimum wage, and at the same time, it will not pack workers and it will not ruin workers. I recall in Osun State, which is my state, when Ogbeni Rao Falekosola was the governor of that state, the minimum wage was 15,000 or thereafter. We could not pay. It was paying salaries in percentages to work out of the state.
Mr. Jide Ojo, with the increased federal allocations under President Bola Ahmed Tinubu, why should governors not be able to pay? Because I recall the Nasarawa state government saying that whatever NLC, the organized labor unions in Nigeria agree with government to pay, that his state is going to be able to pay. But even with this increment, so far, a lot of states are still not paying these minimum wage as expected. So what's the excuse for this governance?
What we need to understand, my brother, is the rising cost of living will not just affect the individual, it also affects government. The amount of overhead, the amount that focus wait for running costs or interest for ministries, departments, and agencies have also increased. The amount that they use as running costs of government has increased exponentially. For instance, if in 2023 April, national state government is spending 5 million monthly to buy diesel, do you think it's the same 5 million they will be paying to buy diesel in 2024? As at last year, before the devaluation and the removal of petrol subsidy, the price of the liter price of diesel was 800 naira per liter. And for that time, everybody was doubtful. Today, the price of the liter price of diesel has gone to 1,008. The same thing with KMS. The last time I bought from here in Abuja, I paid 690 naira per liter. And that's even with the so-called subsidy removal and all of that. But let me also very clearly state this. Many governors will tell you that yes, there is an increase in the federal allocation. But their mandate as a governor is not just to pay salaries of work. Because the workers are just like 10% of the population of the state. Informal sector are more. And the government cannot use their entire state resources to pay salaries and the emoluments of the workers and salaries or pensioners. They have to fix they need to fix the infrastructural deficit in the state. So, in building hospitals, building schools, building roads, electricity projects, and other things that will make way for good governance. Manage the resources and keep the cost of running government low, so that they cannot pay resources to fix the infrastructural deficit in their state. So, to that extent, if my state look at particular state government, virtually was on here recently, there is not even pay salaries because the former governor had borrowed so much that the liability to bet on ground is choking him and not making him to be able to do much. In fact, we have about 150 contractor of the nation, about $500 million debt, as well as 84 or 85 billion naira debt. And how much is the federal allocation of Kaduna State? So, at the same time, the man is facing security challenges. You saw the mass abduction that has been taking place in the state. So, to that extent, you know that, yes, while the allocation to the state may have increased, it also must set aside the resources to manage security, to manage infrastructure, to manage other governance issues that may come up. So you cannot just collect federal allocation and then use all of it to pay salaries of water.
All right. Thank you so much, Mr. Jide Ojo, for joining us on Politics Now today.
It's my pleasure. Have a good day.
Okay, we move on with the conversation. This time around, we want to talk about the lingering fuel scarcity. Now, a week after the federal government assured that the ongoing petrol supply shortages will ease, most filling stations across the Federal Capital Territory, Abuja, remain shut, with few outlets operated by major marketers opened to motorists. Well, here is a report that we filed in from Abuja on the situation in the FCT, and of course, when we come back, we'll talk some more. This is Abuja, the nation's federal capital city. Motorists and commuters stranded on Monday morning. Long queues at gas stations as those who could not wait resorted to buying from black marketers. Stations with fuel supply sold the product at different prices, ranging from 617 naira to 675 naira and 820 naira per litre.
Queuing is just that people are panicking. No, have enough panic buying. You can see everywhere it's well organized. It's spread in depot. Due to bad road, drop the volume.
At a fuel station in Gadua, there was no shift in fuel price as customers lined up their vehicles to buy the product. The queue is winding down. Some of the motorists came out as early as 6 a.m. to buy fuel. In another station around the airport road, commercial sale of the petrol began at about 6 a.m. and the price of the product was sold at 690 naira per litre. However, some stations in Yanya and Karu on the outskirts were not selling fuel as at the time of filing this report. Recall the Independent Petroleum Marketers Association of Nigeria, IPMAN, said on Sunday that the petrol scarcity currently spread into more states across the country will take at least 2 weeks to normalize. Some of the motorists who spoke to LN24/7 lament on the hardship of purchasing petroleum motor spirit.
The situation of this fuel situation in this FCT these days is becoming alarming in the sense that we don't get fuel easily. There are some filling stations that are selling 820 from 850. But basically this one is selling at the rate of 675.
Unlike other filling stations, they don't allow others, people from buy side to enter, and that's why it's a little bit, it doesn't take that much time.
It's really unfortunate that I had to queue to buy fuel at 6:17. But I think by today the queues are quite reduced, unlike what it was yesterday. Yesterday was crazy.
As you can see, it's very difficult to get fuel. And it's very annoying that in a country that produces fuel, we find it difficult to get fuel.
So if Komi can help us to alleviate this problem, we're talking about fuel scarcity, our fuel is not in the game. Our salary is not enough for us.
As the fuel scarcity lingers, many can only hope that the government can address the cause of this scarcity to ease the hardship on Nigerians. Joining me on set is Mr. Abraham Agbo. Good to have you on the show today. He is a public affairs analyst. So let's start with the new minimum wage conversation in the light of our Workers' Day. We have the government, increase workers' salary by 25% to 35%, which the Labour has rejected, that there was no prior agreement for review. So that is not holding, and they don't want that. What they want is a minimum wage. But from what you saw from my report, the Minister of Labour echoed the fact that the government will give the minimum wage taking effect from the 1st of May, but no amount yet. Okay, so what's your reaction to the development so far with Labour?
Well, I think the escorts of the Labour Union and, in fact, the two congresses, we want to try to show their followers that they are on top of their games, And it's quite unfortunate that gone were the days of Danso Shomole when he was the president. Most of the agitations, if you look at it holistically, they are unrealistic, so to speak. But then,
this is from Labour?
From the both ends, from the government per se, and even from the Labour, I cannot comprehend it when government is talking about increasing the minimum wage and they don't have any negotiation with the parties involved, and they are saying it's starting from May 1st. So what exactly are they really holding on to? I mean, if you look at it, the government is also not really serious because that has been the politics over years.
I've been trying to make sense of it in my own analysis, and I'm thinking probably maybe he's saving it as a Democracy Day gift for Nigerians. Could that be the case? Because I heard Adam Soshomole say in an interview that there's an agreement now on the figure. But on another interview, one of the stakeholders who was amongst the tripartite committee was saying the fact that they've not had any meetings to even decide what is going to be the figure.
And that is where I say that the government is really not serious about the whole thing. Because if you talk about an agreement is supposed to be between two parties or even more. So how do you intend to come forward to surprise me positively when I am not carried along? Who tells you that by the time you come on Democracy Day and you announce whatever I want to announce and I'm going to accept? It doesn't work that way. And why even keeping it in secret? Let it be open. And if the government is really serious, it's necessary that the government would have brought the parties involved and discussed with them.
They say they are discussing, but the parties together are saying
they are not discussing. So who do we believe? Who do we trust?
I mean, it's quite disturbing anyway, considering the fact that Nigerians are going through a lot. Just recently, in my opener on the show, I was talking about the Vice President Kashim Shettima, who was defending some of the economic policies that has been, taken by this administration. Talk of removal of fuel subsidy, unification of the exchange rates, and all of that, has made life very difficult for Nigerians. And workers were really expecting, that this new Workers' Day 2024 celebration, will mark, a sort of a hope for them. But right now, it's just like we're neither here, we're neither here. But I want us to get to the conversation of the figure that Labour is proposing, which is 615,000 naira. Is it too high? Is it too low?
It's too high. It's
because
too low.
I don't know if you read Jide Ojo. I just interviewed him a while ago, and he was, on the defense like that. That amount is not reasonable. But when you look at the breakdown of that particular amount, you talk about housing, feeding, education, security, and all the lists that Labour gave to justify that amount. It made quite a lot of sense. But do you think the government can be able to pay that amount or even close to it?
You see, it's really very laughable because when the minimum wage, I think it's even 30,000 naira.
Yes,
how many
except
states?
Except for Edo State.
Okay, except for Edo State.
40 and now to pay 70.
Now you are looking at over 600,000 naira as minimum wage, not considering the fact that when it was even just 30, a lot of states were not really even coping. And if you ask me holistically, most of the states that we have in Nigeria, they're not supposed to be existing. You understand? By the time you look into...
Can you mention any of those states?
In fact, all the northern states, apart from Kano. You understand?
Kano.
Yes. And when you look at it, in internally generated revenue that most of them have been put on, it's not for the federal allocation. Most of them will definitely not be doing what they are doing. But let me state here that it's not because maybe the states are not viable enough. It's a leadership thing, so to speak. If we have the right individuals at the helm of affairs with the natural resources that we have in all the states in Nigeria, I am assuring you that all these states will definitely be vibrant and they'll be doing well.
Let's even look at the states that are even viable. Let's look at Lagos, Port Harcourt, and the likes. But they've not made any commitment so far to a new minimum wage for their workers. And this state, I mean, you look at Lagos, you look at the IGL that they generate every year. I mean, it should justify that workers get a fair deal. And you look at the federal allocations from this year alone under President Bola Tinubu's administration, it has gone up significantly. And I was listening to the Nasarawa state governor talking about the fact that whatever, Labour decides, his state is going to pay. And when you look at Nasarawa state, according to his ranking, ranks, I think, about number 30 in terms of the amount that is being earmarked from federal allocations for the state. And he's making that kind of promise that his state is going to be able to pay. What excuse do governors have not to be able to pay at least whatever amount that is going to be agreed upon?
Now, when you talk about Nasarawa State is one of the states that is really, really blessed. And over time, I think they've had it relatively right with the kinds of leadership they've been churning out, even though they may not really be the acceptable ones, so to speak, on a general scale. If the government agreed to pay the over 600,000 naira minimum wage, and even all the states they want to pay, it's all about sincerity. Because they know what they are doing with the allocations that are coming to them. It's of recent that we have the case of, I think it's even on the Kogi State issue, where they will have to be paying school fees ahead, and a lot of workers are suffering and languishing in pain. Is it really worth it? If only the government is sincere enough and they want to really carry the masses along, I think it is doable. But then we need to also look at the repercussions, the triple effect of this particular money that we are mentioning. When you say 650,000 naira minimum wage, how about the individuals that are out there that are not civil servants? You understand? And with the mentioning of such an amount, before we know, a lot of prices of things will just skyrocket in the country. And the common man on the street.
On that note, I recall Festus, the TUC president, saying that if that minimum wage is effected, that it will not affect inflation. It's not making any sense.
Is it about the talking that it will not? How? What are the rationales? What is the policy that is hinging on? That by the time they increase the minimum, it will not. Okay, you expect those that are in business to keep selling at the rate they are selling, and meanwhile they also are in the society where when they fall sick, they need to go for treatment, they buy drugs, they pay rent, and do other things. So how do you think it's not going to rub off on them? So whether we like it or not, it's going to be a whole long chain effect on the country.
Now, I just want to reason it logically because, for example, let's say a bag of rice goes for 70,000 naira, and then the new minimum wage is effected, and then the person has the capability to probably buy maybe 2-3 bags, depending on whatever budget he has. But the person selling has to sell at a reasonable profit margin, not necessarily based on the minimum wage that has been effected. The question is, how much did you buy whatever produce or product that you are selling? So you sell based on what you purchase. So if minimum wage is effected and the 615,000 naira that labor is looking at, is effected, how does that, suddenly just disrupt the prices of goods and services in the country?
Yes. When you talk about looking at it from a logical angle, you are very correct. Because if you look at it from a logical angle, so to speak, it's not a monolistic kind of business we are talking about. It's not only an individual that is selling rice in the market. We have more than, in the market, we have up to 30, 40, 50 individuals that are dealing on the product, rice per se. And whether you like it or not, they all buy from different sources. So there will be that particular competition. But you cannot guarantee the source where they get it from. And any businessman that is in business is in for profit. So whether I like it or not, they also want to mark up to get their margins. But whether we like it or not, the very moment they increase the minimum wage, a lot of things will definitely change overnight.
Is it not left for government now to regulate prices of goods?
Now, how does government...
If you are actually having the intention of making life convenient for your citizens?
Good. When you talk about government regulating the prices of commodities, what is the government also doing in the provision of commodities? If I am in business as an individual and I get my goods from wherever I get my goods from, it's not that the government is the one providing funds for me. The government cannot come and tell me how I need to sell my goods. The only thing the government can do in this particular case is maybe set up a parallel market, so to speak, where it is controlled by the government. By the time the individuals try maybe the open market and they feel that, okay, the prices are very high there, they go to the government own. But you are there, you're not doing anything, you just want to usurp power to yourself and begin to tell business people not to sell at what particular rate. It doesn't really make any sense. It doesn't make any sense.
So now let's look at the end game of government now. What do you think is at stake? Because I was trying to confirm from Jide Ojo, who is very, very, good in making sense of some of governmental policies. And I was trying to ask him, like, when government says, okay, minimum wage takes effect from the 1st of May without a figure, it can linger for 3 months. And recall that Labour gave an ultimatum to government that if it lingers on, then they cannot guarantee, industrial harmony in the country. So this is not the first time that Labour is giving such threats. And now they are saying, okay, if you don't reverse the electricity tariff hikes in 1 week, then you would have to go in for it. So this is not the first time they've been making these threats. Mm-hmm. So are we saying, Labour and government, just playing like football where they pass the ball and then the other guy pass the ball? It's all just looks scripted out. Can you just make sense of what's going on?
When we were going on this, my man went to a particular video clip I watched recently with regards to two neighbors. The wives, they picked quarrel and they were very, very hard on themselves. So each of them, they were waiting for their husband to return. And when they return, this one will go and instigate the husband. You need to show the husband of the others that this, that. And the two husbands, they came together and they said, if we don't do anything, we may not sleep tonight. So what do we do? It's okay, get a cutlass, let me get a hoe, and let's see what we can do. And by the time they started all those ranting, the women now, they were like, no, it has not come to that. Please come back. They turned up themselves and then they chatted and said, you owe me a bottle later. I think that is what the government and the labor union, they are doing to the masses. Because this is not the first time that the labor is putting out this particular ultimatum. This is also not the first time that the government is also promising this. And at the end, nothing happens. We are in this particular quagmire now that individuals cannot sleep with their eyes closed. They cannot go to work conveniently because of the hike in transportation. And it's a whole lot of things. Even today when I was coming, I looked at my gauge and I was like, how do I queue up to buy fuel before I meet up? I had to just leave. I mean, from here, I'll go and queue up. And it's not that the prices of these particular things have reduced. Suffering unnecessarily in this particular country. And we are very quiet about it. It's really appalling.
Now, you just brought up the issue of fuel scarcity, which, of course, is our next conversation that we want to look at. We've seen the statement, from the government saying that, okay, this is going to be resolved. But it's past a week now. We're still seeing fuel scarcity. We're still seeing long queues. We've interviewed, in my report, I interviewed a lot of Nigerians, and, they were just baffled at the fact that even at this particular time and age, we'll have people still queuing up. Even coming to work this morning, a lot of filling stations were closed up. And the question is, why? So who is to blame now? That's the question. Is it NNPCL or is it the marketers who are even saying that NNPC is not providing, supply for them with so many excuses that they are giving with regards to, the global markets, the war in Ukraine and how it's affecting, the global economy and all of that. But when you look at this, who do you think is to blame?
When we talk about who is to blame, the bus stops are the government table, so to speak. because I still cannot understand why a country like Nigeria, we cannot produce our own fuel. What is happening? What I mean, we have the refineries that have been dormant for ages. What does it really take to revamp these particular refineries? And by the time you talk about the marketer, who maybe the government will want to which they blame to, will you also blame the marketers? They are in business, so to speak. You understand? And, me, I have said it before now that I think the problem is not even with the government, it's with us. We, the masses, who are feeling the impact. Of course, none of these top shots in the government is really being hit by this particular issue of fuel scarcity that we are facing. But we have been so very quiet and very gentle about the whole thing. So long as we can cater for ourselves, life goes on. And if you check the trajectory of the government in the past, I think was it in 2015 when they talked about the renewable energy master plan.
CNG buses.
You understand?
And these were some of the key things that he said he was going to put in place to cushion the effect of the removal of fuel subsidy. So how far with the CNG buses? We just heard of the report of the gas explosion in Ogun State, and the ability to be able to manage that particular alternative source of fuel. So if we're not going to use fuel, how do we guarantee safety if we're going to be using CNG-powered buses or vehicles or even electricity-powered vehicles? When you look at the commitment of government to, alternative sources of fuel, this government has actually made promises. They've made promises and they said, okay, the buses will arrive. I think May was the deadline from one of the spokesperson of the president talking about the CNG buses, which they actually made mention last year. And now May 29th is around the corner. How do you think Nigerians are going to take, this administration based on the promises that they have made to Nigeria in terms of commitment to alternative sources of fuel, of powering vehicles?
You see, as May 29 draws nearer, you begin to see the proponents of the government, the agitations and how they'll be telling us, they are just 1 year in government, even as it is, the promises that they've given us, the system and the rest of it. But let's not forget the fact that this is still the APC government. Like I pointed out, I think from 2015, if you looked at the plans they have when it comes to the renewable energy, we have not scratched it, so to speak. Is it the hydroelectric? I mean, the hydro source of energy that is just wasting away? Is it the sun, the solar energy that we have in the north? And most of it.
I recall a time when there was a particular Nigerian graduate who made an effort to, create a solar-powered vehicle. One would expect that government will take
bring such people in and see how they can empower them and take us to where we are supposed to be. If you look at the individuals that are really performing wonders in the global world, they are Nigerians. You understand? I think somebody was telling me about a video clip of a young chap who connected, went to the river and did whatever and was, sending water from the river, filling. And I said, wow, if it's in other climes where the system is in place, such individual, and we have a whole lot of them, they'll be harnessed and they'll be empowered. Where do you need to take them to? Is it China? Is it anywhere? Send them there. And by the time they are done, bring them back and let us see how we can. Most of the things that we see happening in the country, when it comes to the negative impacts, the whole thing falls back to the government. Because it's in this particular country that we see that the rules that are supposed to be, done, they will be left. And then the ones that are even manageable, they will go and spoil everything and start afresh. The recent happening in River State, I think in Obibo, where they say a tanker fell and then a whole lot of cars were burned. It's as a result of bad road. You understand? And we have a whole lot of them in this country. I think a time has come for the individuals. We need to begin to make our voice heard, really, as in the masses, keep it, drumming it in the ears of these our leaders and let them know that it's not going to be business as usual.
Talking about the masses, drumming it in the ears of the leaders, we saw the House of Reps call for Lokobiri and some other stakeholders regarding the field scarcity, and all they've been able to come up with is that, okay, it is going to be fixed. But the Marketers Association are saying a different thing, that it will take another 1 week for this to subside. So when you say the citizens should come out to talk, I would say that they are actually speaking. But the question is, like, there is no punishment, so to speak, like, okay, why is this happening? If this is happening under your leadership, then you have to go in for it, because you cannot tell how far. I mean, just yesterday we had the report of someone who, as a result of keen for fuel, was killed.
You can imagine.
So you would think that lingering fuel scarcity would not have, this kind of impact that will lead to the loss of a life of a Nigerian. But this is the report that we have gotten. And this issue has to be dealt with, right away. Well, let's talk about the state of the refinery. We have to give kudos to this administration. We've seen the Dangote refinery pick up. The Port Harcourt refinery, they said, at a point it was 60% completion. Then they said 90% completion. These are quite good moves that I would acknowledge on my own. But when you look at how far that we have come in this administration now, it's almost a year. And this was one of the key bane for Labour. If you look at some of the ultimatums that they gave to government, it was on the refineries that we need to start producing our fuels. But here we are. What do you make of the state of our refineries?
You see, when you talk about the states of our refineries, you made mention of the Dangote refinery. And I'm sorry to say that the more I looked at the Dangote refinery, the more confused I even get. Is Dangote importing or is producing? I don't really understand.
Well, he's producing.
Okay. Now, what is the impact in the society? How much are we still buying fuel? So does it really,
But you recall that I think a rep from Dangote said that, okay, this refinery is not really going to significantly reduce the price of fuel, because even at the moment, government is still subsidizing fuel.
So what is the essence?
Marketers.
What is the essence?
If not, we would have seen a jump in price from what it is currently.
They can come up with any type of the explanation they feel is good to the ear, at least maybe to them. And I don't blame them, just like I said, it's we the masses. It's not really, when I say we need to be drumming it in the ears of the government, it's not just by talking, action. You understand? And I'm not saying we need to carry gun and carry, but by the time we're down to, and then they see that the masses that we are really suffering. Which country was it that when they increased the price of fuel, at the mention of that particular increment, everybody that had it, they just shut down. They left their cars on the road and trekked home. You understand? I can't remember the country, but that was what happened. Everywhere was blocked, and the government reversed. So what? Okay, see, if you look at the whole scenario with regards to what the government is doing, some contracts that are being awarded without following the necessary processes, and it's in this country that every year out, you hear about a humongous amount of money that is voted out for a particular building to be renovated.
You are talking about contracts. Let's talk about the Lagos Coastal Road, which is a project that a lot of critics are saying that, this money would have been pushed, to cushion some of the effects of the removal of subsidy, rather than have, what they feel, talking about the critics on quotes now, that will be an opportunity for people to loot money. Because when you say road constructions, you can go through the history to see how much money, has been earmarked for projects that never materialized. So what's your take on that? Because you're talking about humongous monies being pushed into projects, and then we have people who can't even, live well, or talk with a minimum wage that is livable.
No, and that is what I said earlier, that the government, if the government really has the interest of the people at heart, there are a lot of things that they should not even dare. You understand? we have a whole lot of things that are supposed to be revamped in the country. Not just a new, whether you like it or not, it's going to be a white elephant project. They won't do it, and the whole money will go to the pocket of some few individuals, and nothing will happen. It has been happening in this particular country. You understand? So it's glaring that the government is not for the masses. It's glaring that the government is not for the masses.
Okay, now when you say the government is not for the masses, there are some people that would want to disagree with that, in the sense that you look at the removal of fuel subsidy, just like the justification from Kashim Shettima, the vice president. He said, I mean, these policies, they just had to go. It just had to go. Subsidy had to be removed. But the question now that we are actually on the neck of the government is the issue of, okay, why were we not well prepared, to be able to tackle some of the effects of this policy? So in that light, would you say that is where government is not really responsive to the plight of Nigerians in general?
When you talk about the perception of the vice president, I want to give it to him, because if I were him, I think I would also say the same thing. I'm in the system. You understand? So I cannot be in the system and be fighting the system. But deep down, he knows that he is just trying to defend what is not defendable. If you are talking about the subsidy has to go, yes, the subsidy has gone. Everybody knows about that. What are the impact of this subsidy that has gone? How long does it necessarily need to take us to begin to feel the impact? When we see that most of this particular money that you are even getting from other areas, you don't channel the money to what will begin to improve the lives of the individuals. You keep talking things very bogus. We don't need all those things. Do the little that the common man can begin to feel it and move ahead. I have told you with regards to how people cannot sleep with light on. This particular, the electricity that they've increased, we are not even getting the light. And then maybe the fuel that you need to buy to put in your generator, one for the filling stations, they don't sell in gallons now. And you begin to wonder how some individuals are selling along the roads. Where do they get their own fuel from? And when you want to go and get from those ones, very exorbitant.
So still talking about the lingering fuel scarcity, you can see that from what you just said now, it could go beyond just the responsibility of government, because you just asked a very important question. Why are some people selling fuel, and where did they get it from? So you talk about people who are hoarding fuel, which is also constituting to the menace of the fuel scarcity.
You see?
So how do you think government can, put that into check?
You see, when we recently talked about the increase in food prices and the rest of it.
High cost of living.
High cost of living. They were trying to bring in government to see how they could regulate. Where the government needs to regulate, that government will not regulate. You understand? We talk about this particular fuel is gotten from the government per se, and there are individuals that are licensed to deal in this particular product. So if fuel is seen outside being sold at the black market, they know where to get these particular individuals, but they are not doing that. When it comes to regulate prices now, you want a businessman who is dealing on his own particular line of business genuinely. You want to go and regulate. It doesn't work that way.
Now, talking about what you just said, just before we came into the studio, I read a report that a couple of fuel suppliers are complaining or just putting the word out there that the government wants to retrieve their license. If we have these suppliers' license revoked, will that play a significant role in affecting the distribution of fuel?
Why not?
Which could worsen the
it will not worsen it in the situation that we are in already. We cannot feel any other negative impact, so to speak. So if there are individuals that have violated the law outrightly, they should be used as scapegoats for others to follow. You understand? It's in this country that most often you hear the government will tell you, they're going to sanction this, they're going to do this, but within days, everybody has forgotten about the issue and we move on. And it's so very, how do I put it, that in this country we have things to talk about every time. So by the time you pick this and you're like, okay, let's see what will happen. Tomorrow another thing will come up and we've left it and we'll forge ahead. You see? So
All right, to wrap up the conversation, Mr. Abraham Agbo, let's look at the May 29 that is coming. Whether this administration likes it or not, people are going to be hell-bent on, okay, what have you achieved so far? But we've got a few days to the 29th, and of course, I know that the president is aware that Nigerians are not going to take any further excuse after this time. So how do you think these few days the government can really clean up in-house? First, which is very important, the new minimum wage for workers that we just discussed, which I feel is key. At least it'll help to alleviate, the economic hardship in the country for government workers, and government workers have families, so there will be a trickle effect that will, spread down to other people and also serve as a benchmark for private organizations to also do something to ease the plight of workers. So just your final thoughts as we wrap up.
I don't need to be a prophet to tell you that it's going to be stories as usual. But whether we like it or not, the government will come out with some wonderful, they will come out with some wonderful ways, things that they've packaged with regards to how far they've fared. And whether they like it or not, we that are in the system, we're also seeing if what they are saying is in tandem with what we are feeling. You understand? But take it or leave it. Like I said, I don't need to be a prophet to tell you that it's going to be stories as usual. Even the minimum wage they're talking about.
So you're not optimistic?
I'm not optimistic. No, I'm not optimistic.
Okay.
I'm sorry to say that.
All right. Thank you so much once again,
Thank you,
Abraham Agbo, for being with us on the show today. And that's the much we can take. We'll keep tabs on the polity and continue to bring conversations to key burning issues regarding our nation's politics. Once again, my name is Mono Balangbogo, thanking you for watching the show today. See you next week.